Ireland historically has a strong connection with the paranormal, and Dublin's no different. Being over 1,000 years old, it has its fair share of dark deeds and gruesome goings on. It was the centre of the slave trade in Viking Ireland, and the centre of oppressive Norman and in turn British rule in Ireland. So there's no shortage of restless spirits. From spooky castles to creepy churches, to haunted houses and chilling hotels. Even the pub or inn, the centre of Irish life, has its fair share of spirits of the non-intoxicating kind. Dublin has everything a horror fan could ever wish for. The capital was home to Bram Stoker and Sheridan Le Fanu, two of the most celebrated horror writers of their age. So you can be sure there's no shortage of spooky places that inspired some of their best works. Let's have a look at some of the most haunted spots in the capital. St Audien's Church. This imposing church located in the Liberties, the oldest part of Dublin, is known to be haunted by the Green Lady. The Green Lady is the ghost of a woman called Darky Kelly, an inn and reputed brothel keeper in the 1700s. The inn was a meeting place for the many members of the Hellfire Club, which we covered in another video, including Simon Luttrell, the Sheriff of Dublin. Kelly, who lived near St Audien's Church, was thought to have become pregnant with a child of the Dublin Sheriff Simon Luttrell, 1st Earl of Carhampton, who was a member of the Hellfire Club. She asked him for money and he accused her of witchcraft and killing the baby in a satanic ritual. Her life came to a very bitter end after she was sentenced to death and publicly burned at St Stephen's Green in 1746. She haunts the area to this day. But this isn't the only strange story St Audien's has to tell. This late 9th century grave slab stood outside the tower of St Audien's Church for centuries. The stone, composed of granite with a relief, equal-armed Greek cross. It also bears a design on the reverse, but this is not very visible. It was rumoured to have a supernatural guardian, because despite being removed several times from the church, it always returned to its rightful place. In 1308 or 9, a marble cistern was erected in Cornmarket by John le Decour, the Mayor of Dublin, to provide the citizens of Dublin with the first public water supply. The lucky stone, Cluck on Ale, was set beside the cistern so that all that drunk the water might have luck. Local merchants believed that success in business depended largely on making a daily visit to the touchstone. In 1826, the lucky stone was stolen by people from outside Dublin and disappeared for 20 years. However, during the theft, the stone apparently became heavier and heavier until the horse collapsed under its weight. The thieves dumped the stone on waste ground. Later, when workmen attempted to smash it, the stone moaned and rolled. The Reverend Dr. Alexander Leeper, who was rector between 1859 and 94, set the stone in its present position in the 1860s. It is said the ghost of the clergymen still walk the passageway to protect the stone. St Audien's is the only medieval parish church remaining in Dublin City, which is still used. It's located just west of Christ Church Cathedral, within the medieval town walls. The church itself dates from 1190, dedicated to St Owen, Bishop of Rouen in Normandy, and may have replaced an earlier church of St Columba. The church tower dates from the 17th century and houses 6 bells, 3 of which are Ireland's oldest bells, dating from 1423. They're still rung every week. St Michan's Church. This 9th century church is home to vaults containing a number of mummified remains. The particular atmospheric conditions in the vaults makes it suitable for natural mummification. Amongst these are preserved bodies of a 400-year-old nun and an 800-year-old crusader, a body with severed hands and feet, and also the Shears brothers who took part in the 1798 rebellion. But it's not just the bodies that rest there, as it is said their spirits have remained haunting the cold, dark vault of the church. Many visitors have reported hearing strange whispers and spine-tingling presences while walking through the quiet eeriness of the vaults. Most cities have their rivalries, and Dublin's no exception. The main rivalry in Dublin is north and south of the Liffey. And in typical north-south Dublin rivalry, two churches in Dublin, one south and one north of the Liffey, have a similar paranormal reputation. The Pepper Canister Church, St Stephen's Church on Upper Mount Street, which is more popularly known as the Pepper Canister because of the shape of its spire looks like a pepper canister. But as night falls, the building turns into something more formidable and sinister. It becomes a hotbed of ghostly activity. In fact, whispers say if you walk around the church 3 times, you'll come face to face with no other than the devil himself. In a nod to its paranormal reputation, the recent Bram Stoker Festival staged a version of Faust there. And on the north side, the Black Church has a similar reputation. It's located on St Mary's Place near Mountjoy Street. The Black Church, or St Mary's Chapel of Ease, was built in 1830. Legend has it that if you run around the church 3 times at midnight, the devil will appear and steal your soul. If anyone is brave enough to give it a go, let us know how you got on. Clonliffe Road. This area of Drumcondra, close to Crow Park, is home to not one but 2 spooky tales. The Headless Horseman originates in Clonliffe College in Drumcondra. In the 1700s there was a gambler called Jeff Jones. His ghost and horse are said to ride the train tracks all around Dublin. People have even said that they've heard the hooves at night. Clonliffe Road is also credited with the origins of Dracula. Arthur Bram Stoker lived in nearby Buckingham Street, and a suicide plot in Ballybog, end of Clonliffe Road, is said to be the inspiration for his gruesome tale. It was an unconsecrated burial location where people who took their own lives were buried with a stake driven through their hearts. Corca Park. By day, the picturesque Clondalkin Park is a fantastic amenity for local families. By night, however, residents give the area known as the Devil's Passage a wide berth because of its reputation for spooky happenings and weird sightings. Apparently, there's a floating tree which allegedly curses anyone who touches it. Not to mention numerous reports by terrified visitors of sightings of a headless horseman galloping through the passage on his carriage and steeds. Even those who haven't seen the spectral apparition have reported hearing horses galloping through the passage when it has been completely empty. The Shelbourne Hotel might be one of Dublin's swankiest hotels, but if you're scared of ghostly goings on, you might want to think twice about staying there, at least in certain of its more fashionable rooms. The St Stephen's Green Hostelry is reputedly haunted by the spirit of Mary Masters, a 7-year-old girl who died of cholera in 1791. The mischievous poltergeist likes the luxury she was denied in life, as she favours the hotel's most luxurious rooms in particular, with several reports by terrified customers of sightings and hauntings over the years. In 2015, Hollywood actress Lily Collins even reported that Mary had paid her a visit during her stay at the 5-star haunt. The daughter of pop star Phil Collins was filming the Mortal Instruments City of Bones when she sensed the presence of a giggling ghost while staying in the hotel. Maybe Mary Masters is a fan of Emily in Paris. The Royal College of Physicians. Back in the 16th century, doctors at the college on Kildare Street took up the services of resurrection men, otherwise known as body snatchers, to find people to practice on. Body snatchers would steal bodies from the graves and sell them to the doctors for a good sum of money. One chilling account tells of a particularly unpleasant surgeon who was killed by his students in a rage, and they say his spirit still lingers in the dark hallways of the college. The Brazen Head, being the oldest pub in Dublin, was bound to have some ghostly legends of its own. Rebel leader Robert Emmet used the pub to plan the rebellion in 1803, which was a massive failure. Emmet was hung, drawn and quartered outside St Catherine's Church on Thomas Street, just a stone's throw away from the pub. Robert Emmet had famously said, "When my country takes her place among the nations of the earth, then, and not until then, let my epitaph be written." While it's unknown where Emmet was buried, his spirit can be seen visiting his favourite pub from time to time. In the style of a true dub, not even the executioner can keep him out of the pub. The Grave Diggers Pub. This Glasnevin pub is actually called John Kavanagh's, but locals know it by its more macabre moniker. It actually runs one of the ghost tours that go around Dublin every year, and is well worth going on if you are visiting our capital. It's located just around the corner from Glasnevin Cemetery. It's widely believed that some of the million-plus souls buried in Ireland's biggest resting place come back to visit every now and then. As I said earlier, not even death can keep a good Dubliner out of the pub. But some of these patrons are of the rowdier variety, with reports of bottles of whiskey flying off the shelves by themselves. There was also an elderly man sitting at the bar in a dated tweed suit, who simply faded away after finishing his pint of stout. There's been more than a few unexplained happenings over the years. The Hellfire Club. We covered the Hellfire Club comprehensively in another video, but it also has to be obviously included in this one. The spooky Dublin Mountains property was built in 1740 on the site of a Neolithic passage tomb. Legend has it that the devil blew the roof off the building to punish workers for using stones from the tomb in its construction. It's believed that a branch of the Hellfire Club used to gather there for sessions involving heavy drinking, satanic worship and sexual depravity. Frequent human and animal sacrifices are said to have attracted regular visits from the devil and other paranormal activities. It is still a very, very creepy place as the sun goes down. With all the executions that took place there, it's hardly surprising that Kilmainham Jail, Dublin 8 prison, is allegedly haunted by tortured spirits. Visitors, workmen and even governors have reported a number of strange happenings in the prison, where many of the Irish heroes of 1916 Rising met their deaths. From mysterious lights late at night to unexplained ghostly footsteps, the jail may yet experience its own kind of rising someday. There are more than 30,000 castles on the island of Ireland, mainly built by the Normans and their British descendants to keep the local inhabitants in place. Most of these have gruesome reputations and of course are the perfect settings for ghostly goings on. Dublin Castle, which was built in the early 13th century on the site of a Viking settlement, is another do-miss destination if you want to evade the city's ghosts. The heads of overcome invaders were mounted on the castle walls to deter other would-be assailants, and their decapitated corpses lie buried beneath. But according to tour guides, their spirits can stray. In the 1950s, a Garda sergeant, the Garda being the Irish police force, recounted an experience that he had while stationed in Dublin Castle. He recalled that he was alone in the dormitory one night when the light suddenly switched itself off. He switched it on again, checked that he was alone, and sure enough there was nobody there. He then heard the sound of coal being shovelled into a fire in the nearby kitchen. But when he went to investigate, he found the room was empty and the coal shovel had not been disturbed. A building in the upper yard is also reportedly haunted by a woman who lost her beloved in battle. Drimna Castle. This picturesque 13th century castle is hiding some spooky secrets behind its walls. It was once said to be the home of Lady Eleanor de Barnwell. The spectral apparition of the once beautiful flower of Drimna Castle, Eleanor Barnwell, slips through the lonely dark rooms of the castle, searching for the love she was denied. This was a love she would never have. She was to be married off to her cousin, Edmund Barnwell, a man she respected but wasn't in love with. This was common practice with many of the aristocratic families. This was a way of holding on to their vast estates. The marriage ceremony of Eleanor and Edmund was not to be denied any splendour or preparation, for Eleanor's uncle was a very wealthy man of high position. Unfortunately for him, at a social gathering at a friend's house, somewhere near the outskirts of Dublin, all these plans were thrown on their head, because it was here she met her true love. His name was Sean O'Byrne. Sean O'Byrne of the O'Byrne clan of Wicklow was a sworn enemy of the Barnwells and all other normal families. Eleanor's heart was filled with love for this man, something she could never explain to her uncle or her husband-to-be. So it came to pass that in the late 16th century that Eleanor and Edmund left Drimna Castle with all the pomp and frills that adorned the noble wedding. They were only halfway to their wedding ceremony destination, which was St. Patrick's Cathedral, when Edmund's coach was attacked by Sean O'Byrne and his followers. Edmund was quickly subdued and killed at the scene. Eleanor's uncle took advantage of the time it took to kill Edmund and regrouped with his knights to see off the attack. In the melee that followed, many of O'Byrne's were slaughtered, and sadly for Eleanor, so was her beloved Sean. Eleanor was brought back to the castle in shame, because not only had she lost the man she truly loved, but she had caused the death of her own cousin. Her uncle Hugh forbade her to leave the castle, partly for her safety, but mainly out of anger, as he blamed her for the attack on the wedding party. After a day or two of mourning, Eleanor somehow managed to get free from her rooms and made her way through the narrow wooded laneways until she finally reached Sean O'Byrne's grave deep in the Dublin mountains. The deep well of pain in her heart had no end that night, and there was nothing in this world that could mend her loss. She lay holding the soil that covered her love until the wind and snow snuffed out the light from her frail body. Reports from visitors to the castle of smelling the fragrance of lilies, hearing eerie crying, and feeling as if they were being watched all suggest that the lady is very much still around. Malahide Castle was built in the 12th century. It is just north of Dublin. It is one of the most haunted castles in Ireland, with at least 5 ghosts in residence. Malahide was owned by one family, the Talbots, for nearly 800 years. The only time the house was out of Talbot control was from 1649 to 1660, when Oliver Cromwell granted the property to one of his loyalists, Miles Corbett. Corbett was later hanged, drawn and quartered at Malahide Castle for his atrocities during Cromwell's reign. He was used as an example for those who might consider conspiring against the crown. His ghost is one of 5 that haunts Malahide Castle today, and you might be fortunate or unfortunate enough to encounter him or another spirit on your visit to Ireland. Despite the family's overall good fortune, there were tragedies. One is associated with 3 of the 5 identified ghosts. Miss Maud Plunkett. Maud was a lonely young woman, daughter of the Baron of Killeen. She and a young soldier, Walter Hussey, Lord Galtram, fell in love. Because Lord Galtram was on duty, his father petitioned the Talbots for permission to marry at Malahide. The Talbots agreed. There are 2 versions of Lord Galtram and Maud Plunkett's wedding day. One version is that Galtram was ambushed on his way to the wedding, stabbed and killed by his rival. The other is that Galtram and Plunkett were married the morning of Whit Monday in 1429. A few hours later, Galtram was killed in battle, possibly by his rival. Either way, Lord Galtram's ghosts haunt Malahide Castle, wandering the halls groaning and pointing to the spear wound in his side. The groans may be from his wounds. Most say he's groaning because Maud wed his rival shortly after his death. Husband number 2 wasn't around long, and Maud married a 3rd time to the Lord Chief Justice. By this time Maud had become more than a little insecure. By most accounts, Maud was very possessive of her new husband. Some say she was even abusive. According to legend, Maud and the Chief Justice fought frequently. Maud was usually the instigator. Reputedly, she chased him around the house during their fights. It's believed that the Lord Chief Justice ghost is the person ghostly Maud pursues down the halls at Malahide. The 4th ghost is Miles Corbett, that we talked about earlier. Corbett was one of the 59 regicides, members of Parliament, who signed Charles I's death warrant. After Charles I was overthrown, Corbett was granted Malahide by Cromwell. He then promptly tried to outlaw Catholicism and attacked the local abbey. During his short tenure, he managed to become hated by all the locals. St. Patrick's Cathedral is visited by millions of tourists every year. At night time, the area around St. Patrick's Close and Patrick's Cathedral and the nearby Marsh's Library takes on a dark and eerie look. But the main reported ghost of the cathedral is quite benign. The Dublin Cathedral is said to be haunted by the spirit of a large Newfoundland sea dog. Apparently he belonged to a famous sea captain who died in Dunleary Harbour in the Great Storm of 1861. Legend has it that the heartbroken pet followed his master's funeral procession before lying down and eventually starving to death on top of the captain's grave. The poor pooch reportedly appears as a large shaggy form curled up at the base of the captain's monument in the cathedral. Beside the cathedral is Marsh's Library, one of the oldest still operating libraries in Europe, which has a very particular ghost story. I was brought up right beside it, and we all knew this story from a very young age. Marsh's Library is located behind St. Patrick's Cathedral. It's Ireland's oldest public library. Inside, the library is for the most part untouched, remaining beautiful. Marsh's Library is one of the very few 18th century buildings left in Dublin that's still being used for its original purpose. It's made up of 2 long galleries joined by a small reading room. Books are shelved in bays on either side of the gallery. The interior of the library has an elegant dark oak bookcases filled with old books. Bookcases are complete with rolling ladders, and walking through the gallery almost feels like a journey through Harry Potter's Hogwarts into the restricted section. But this library has more than just books as residence. The ghost of an old man has been seen rummaging through the bookcases at midnight. It's said to be the ghost of Archbishop Narcissus Marsh himself, the library's founder. Marsh was Archbishop of Dublin from 1694. In 1707 he founded his library on the grounds of the House of St. Sepulchre, the Archbishop's house. It's not surprising that Narcissus Marsh should return to the place that has such an importance in his life, even after his death. The story of the Archbishop's ghostly appearance involves his favourite niece, Grace, whom he'd reared from a child. Grace was 19-year-old and fell in love with a sea captain. Marsh didn't approve and made his opposition to the relationship known. Grace and the sea captain ran away and eloped. She left a note for her uncle explaining her disappearance and asking for forgiveness. Not wanting the Archbishop to find it in time to stop her, she placed it in one of the thousands of books in the library. But Archbishop Marsh never found the note and returns to the library frequently on an endless search for it. Walking from the first gallery through to the second, you can feel the temperature drop. Let's pretend the chill is due to the ghostly spirit and not the north-facing wall. Chained libraries were common in the Middle Ages as a means of keeping expensive books safe. In Marsh's library, they are locked the readers into cages to stop them nicking the books. At the back of the library, you can see 3 of the cages, adding to the eerie feelings. The bodies of Jonathan Swift's alter ego's travels and his girlfriend Stella are buried next door in St. Patrick's Cathedral. Copies were made of their skulls, and Stella's can be found in one of the cages at the back of the library. Jonathan's used to be in the library, but it's now next door in St. Patrick's Cathedral. Some people say that Swift's ghost comes to Marsh's library to visit Stella. Besides the ghostly visitors, Marsh's libraries had a lot of famous visitors too. The likes of Bram Stoker, Jonathan Swift and James Joyce have all been here. You can see their signatures scrawled in the visitors book. Stoker became a regular reader in Marsh's, visiting frequently during his studies in Trinity College. Detailed records happen to survive of what he consulted in his visits. Books on religion, witchcraft and travel in Eastern Europe. This is the one paranormal event I experienced myself. Walking by late one night, we saw a distinct flicker of candlelight through one of the windows, and then it moved from one window to the other. There was at that time no night security. We checked, we talked to the Dean later on. And in any case, it was most definitely candlelight, not the steady light of a torch. Given the rarity of the books in there, I'm sure nobody in their right mind would introduce a naked flame into that building anyway. Marsh's library is open to the public. If you're going, make sure to visit in daylight, unless of course you have a meeting with Archbishop Narcissus Marsh.